Hello and welcome back to the channel, where today we're going to be exploring what is arguably my most powerful deck, Storm, Force of Nature. Now, this deck is inherently strong because of what she does, but also I just enjoy the character, so therefore I decided to build this deck way back and just made it more and more powerful over time. This deck was voted by the few of you who did actually check out my channel post of what deck I should do next. Thank you guys.
I got you, homie.
And in that case, we're going to get right away into the video. We're going to start with Storm herself. She is a 3/4 mutant hero for 4 in Teamer colors. Mutant hero, flying vigilance. Whenever she deals combat damage to a player, the next instant or sorcery you cast this turn has Storm. If you're not familiar with Storm, Storm is a kind of broken mechanic where basically for each spell that has been cast this turn, you choose to copy that spell that many times, and you can even choose new targets for the copies. So kind of nuts, kind of busted, but we're here to have fun with her. Now, the entire point in the way that I built this deck, it was off of a whim. I really liked the spell Lightning Bolt, so I decided to build a theme deck around it. So I got this cool, fancy Lightning Bolt, this textless version, and kind of just built the entire deck around that. To put it simply, if you have Lightning Bolt, Mana Geyser, and Storm King's Thunder in your hand, you're going to go burr and try to win with killing everybody with Lightning Bolts over and over.
Lightning bolt! Lightning bolt! Lightning bolt! Sleep! Lightning bolt! Lightning bolt! Sleep! Lightning bolt!
So yeah, the idea is really to cast like something like Mana Geyser a billion times, or Storm King's Thunder for X is equal a large amount of numbers, and then Lightning Bolt. So that's the plan. We do have some backups like Bolt Wave to help us get there, because obviously you're not killing everybody right at 40. Gotta ping them down over time if they're not doing so themselves. So Bolt Wave is a nice on-theme way to do so. We got Chandra's Ignition, where target creature will deal damage to each other creature and each opponent. Storm is great because she's kind of a lone wolf in this deck, where there's not very many creatures. She's very much a spellcasting deck. So she doesn't care if she board wipes everything on your side. So having a board wipe that also damages your opponents is always nice, especially when you can storm that off, say, 3 or 4 times. It's great. Gutter Snipe also helps with that effect, because obviously anytime you do anything in this deck, you're going to just be pinging everybody for 2, and that adds up over time. Third Path Iconoclast. Boy, that's a mouthful. 2/1 for 2 human monk. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, you make a 1/1 soldier. To put it a buck, these are going to be blockers. You're going to get pinged over time, so that you need some sort of protection, and just by playing the game that you were already playing to play, you just get little soldiers to help you with that. So always good on that. Got Delayed Blast Fireball. Now this has Foretell, so if you pay 2, you can then later cast it for 6 mana. But if you do, this spell bumps up from dealing 2 damage to each opponent and each creature they control to 5. And remember, that can be stormed, meaning with Storm, you can essentially do like 15 to each opponent and 15 to each creature that isn't yours, which is great. So always love that one. Sulfim helps us double all that non-combat damage, which is always great, and he has the ability to try to make himself indestructible. So that's always neat. And this one I've actually considered cutting, because after playing with it once, I wasn't entirely impressed. But we got the new Emeritus in the red cycle from Strixhaven. Whenever you cast your 3rd spell each turn, this creature becomes prepared, and then it has Lightning Bolt. This is really just a backup for Lightning Bolt in case I don't draw into it, which isn't very likely. There is a lot of draw in this deck, and with Storm adding on to that, you can likely draw most of your deck each game. So that one might get cut. Lightning Bolt does show up pretty often. But that is the idea of the deck. Now, how do we go about that? Well, first, I'm going to start with things that essentially just help the Storm count. Faithless Looting is just draw 2 cards and discard 2 cards. I didn't put it into the card advantage pile just because it gives you no card advantage per se. It just kind of helps cycle through your hand. It does have the flashback, so that's also nice, and just getting through more cards for only 1 red mana. It's not bad. Got the Blazing Fire Singer. It is just a creature that enters prepared, but it has Seething Song attached to it, so you can essentially make more mana for later. Sphinx of the Forgotten Lore. It does have flash, so you can cast it on an opponent's turn to get it ready and not be removed via a board wipe or something, which is nice. Flying 3/3 for 4 mana. Whenever this creature attacks, target instant or sorcery card gains flashback until end of turn. Flashback is equal to that mana cost. So this is kind of more like a recursion spell as well, but the idea is you can swing this, cast an instant just before Storm hits, and then therefore add to the Storm count. Storm hits, and then the next instant or sorcery you have has flashback. Or if you need that spell you want to recur, you can also do it that way because it doesn't. It says until end of turn. You can wait until later, but I usually find it better in adding to the Storm count to just cast like an Opt or Brainstorm just to help that count go up. We also have Cloud of Fairies. It's just a 2 mana 1/1 flyer. When it enters, untap 2 lands. So really is just there to help the Storm count. It just untaps the lands you use to help to cast it, and then it's a flying blocker. So not terrible, but it's there. Pyretic Ritual for 2 mana, add 3. Again, this just adds to the Storm count. You are also mana positive, but then you are down on cards, so just keep that in mind. Seething Song, again, was attached to that creature from earlier. 3 mana, add 5 to your mana pool. So mana positive on that as well. Adds to the Storm count and helps you do more of that shenanigans to get towards the Lightning Bolt. We also have Snap, which is a form of removal, but then it also untaps 2 lands. So you can just use this on whatever, save your own creature or whatever, and help you do that. So that's kind of just more my Storm pile. Kind of helps fuel the game plan. Doesn't really have too much to say outside of that. Then we're also going to have some removal and protection in this package. We got Vandal Blast, which is great for artifact decks. You need a solid board wipe. There you go. You can cast this just for the 1 and Storm with that as well if you need to save on some mana or whatever else you need to do. But I think it's pretty necessary in most red decks. Next we have Negate. Counter target non-creature spell, which is a solid board wipe protection or single target removal that isn't a creature. So always good in any blue deck. Got Heroic Intervention in the Spider-Man treatment because this is a Marvel deck. I do like Marvel. I don't care what the haters say on the internet. I'm actually excited for the Marvel set. So I'm hoping to get some new cool arts that are more fitting to Storm herself. But anyway, 2 mana. Permanents you control gain indestructible and hexproof until end of turn. So you can just cast this to help with the Storm count if you really need to. You don't have an amazing attack or something. Or a board wipe is coming. You can always protect it. So always good there. Beast Within. Destroy target permanent. That does include lands. So that's always nice in a pinch. And they just get a 3/3 beast. Which is, fine. Taking 3 over time isn't too bad. Storm does have vigilance, so she can reasonably block that if she needs to. An offer you can't refuse. Counter target non-creature spell. Its controller creates 2 treasure tokens. I don't care if they have mana. I have more counter spells in my hand because we're going to have a lot of card draw. So, you know what? I'd rather they just counter that board wipe and move on. Rapid Hybridization, similar to Beast Within, except they get a lizard and only a 1 in blue, which is kind of nuts. So, always love to have that. Hexing Squelcher, this is usually more like a CDH card. I'm fine with including it in here just because people who I tend to run this deck tend to go a little harder on targeted removal. Targeted removal or things of that nature. So having somewhat of a ward and counter ability is nice in this. And then obviously if you're storming off and you're getting ready to cast that lightning bolt and then somebody counterspells it, it's nice to have that further protection already on the board. Got Arcane Denial, just more counterspelling. Not too bad when it comes to giving you card draw as well, because you want more cards in hand at all times. Propaganda is a nice just protection spell. You're going to get pinged over time, only having 1 creature on the field usually, so therefore you're going to want having the ability to block potential incoming, massive amount of damage. There you go. Classic OG counterspell. Enough said. Lightning Greaves, a fantastic piece in this. Storm does love to get targeted removal, so therefore having Shroud is nice, and you don't necessarily need to target your creature very often outside of maybe Chandra's Ignition. But this also grants haste, which Storm really loves as well. And just solid protection for Storm. Okay, next I'm going to call this the Recursion package. This is ways to get spells back from your graveyard because there's going to be a lot of great spells that you've cast and maybe you want to get them back. You didn't draw into another great alternative, so these are ways to get those back. You have Lost in Memories from the Avatar set. It's a flash enchantment, so you can throw this on Storm before combat damage actually hits. But it grants +1/+1, and when this creature deals combat damage to a player, target instant or sorcery in your graveyard gains flashback, and the flashback is equal to its mana cost. So adds to the Storm count, helps you get that Lightning Bolt or whatever else you need back out so that you can use it again and again. It does unfortunately go away permanently after that, but hey, I mean, not too many cards that permanently get your spell back into your hand or anything like that, so can't complain there. We have good old Flashback. I love this card from Strixhaven so much. Just 1 red mana, instant. Target instant or sorcery gains flashback until end of turn. Flashback is equal to its mana cost. That's solid. The only part about this is, unlike Lost in Memories, this is only a one and done, but sometimes that's all you need. So there we go. Flood of Recollection, 2 blue, sorcery, return target instant or sorcery from your hand, and then exile this. This can be copied a lot, and then that's a whole lot of fun, but this is another way to get out spells permanently out of your graveyard, so that's always great. Speaking of, a Gale Waterdeep Prodigy. Now, this is one that I think is cool and interesting, and I wouldn't mind a deck based entirely around this. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery, you can cast the other type from your graveyard, and again, with that text, if you cast it from your graveyard, it's exiled instead. So you cast an instant, you can now cast a sorcery from your graveyard. You still have to pay the mana cost, but it's cool. It does get around timing restrictions as well, which I think is kind of neat. So if you cast an instant at a time that you normally would only be able to cast an instant, you can get around that and still cast that sorcery because it doesn't say otherwise. So that's always neat. Then we have Regrowth, which is just return target card from your graveyard to your hand. This is good for a number of reasons. I don't think I need to say why, but it can get instants to sorceries as well as permanents. So I like the recursion aspect of this deck because you are going to be going through a lot of great spells. Speaking of, we're going to have a lot of card draw. So I'm calling this the card advantage pile, mostly because it's not all inherently draw, but, you know, we'll get there. Starting that, in fact, with Mystical Tutor. I think it's the only tutor in the deck. I could be wrong, but you basically go look for an instant or sorcery, put it on top of your library, reveal it, and then shuffle. So that's nice. Go get that Lightning Bolt. Go get that, you know, Mana Geyser, Storm King's Thunder, whatever you need to do. So that will help out a lot. We got Stock Up, a classic already. 3 mana, look at the top 5, put 2 of them in your hand, and the rest in the bottom of your library random order. Again, if you can storm off with this, with Storm, you're going to be looking at 2 cards per cast of this. Say your Storm count of 3, and then you cast this. You're going to get the original and then 3 copies. You're going to be up by like 6 cards, which is a great rate. And you're going to be looking at a lot of the cards, so you're actually sorting through cards that you'd rather have. So really good card in this deck. Speaking of, we also have a Consult the Star Charts. It has a kicker cost, but it's only 2 for the kicker and the original. Look at the top X cards of your library. X is the number of lands you control. We do have a lot of lands in this deck because of the amount of ramp and the type of ramp that we have, so this actually is pulling its weight big time. But anyway, you look at the top X cards of your library, where X is the lands you control. Put one of those cards into your hand. If the spell is kicked, you put 2, and you put the rest in the bottom of your library in a random order. So that's fantastic. That is also just great card draw and advantage. You can go digging really deep into finding Lightning Bolt or whatever board piece you need in order to do what you need to do. Salinity Vision is look at the top 6. You can reveal an instant or sorcery. Again, there's going to be a lot in this deck, so you'll be able to find something and put it in your hand. It also doubles as a land on the back in case you get desperate. You got Lock and Load, which has the plot mechanic, meaning you can pay 4, put this off to the side in exile where opponents can't interact with it, and then at a later turn you can cast it for free, which is great because this says draw a card, then draw a card for each other instant or sorcery you've cast this turn. That is basically putting on a layaway of an amazing card draw source for Storm. So you can easily draw out your whole deck when you Storm with this effect. You got Ponder, which is a look at the top 3, put them back in any order, and you may shuffle draw a card, which is, again, just a fantastic card advantage piece. Also got that neat little Spider-Man art, so you can enjoy that. I know this card is in Japanese, but I enjoy it. It's Growth Spiral. It is basically just draw a card, and you can play an additional land on your turn. I put this in the card advantage pile rather than the ramp because you're guaranteed the card draw. You're not always guaranteed the land drop, but it technically does both. Any cards that do double duty like this are fantastic in this deck. We got Opt, which is just an instant to scry 1, then draw a card. Again, with Storm, if this is the last spell that you're storming off with, great. You're going to be scrying 1, then drawing a card like 5 times. That's card advantage for only 1 card cast there. The difference is you can also use this in the beginning of the storm count in order to get the higher storm count. So this is also great. Low cost spells like this always work in this deck really well. Metamorphose is really interesting. Add 2 mana of any combination of colors and draw a card. So when you storm with this, with Storm, you're getting more mana than you put into it and drawing cards, which is really interesting. Pretty much abuses that effect in this deck, and I believe the secret layer that this came with, or was part of it, also featured a Storm card of this because they already recognized how good it was. We got Unexpected Windfall, and again, in the Spider-Man art, I know some people aren't a fan of this. I probably would be replacing this at some point, but again, keeping with the Marvel theme. 4 mana for an instant. As an additional cost to cast the spell, discard a card. Now, to cast the original, you need to do that, but if you copy this effect with Storm's Storm count, that doesn't get added onto it. So essentially, you're down 1 card, draw 2 cards, and then 2 cards per Storm count, which is nuts. But then it's also gravy on top of that. It creates 2 treasure tokens, which is nuts. Because again, with Storm, if you're Storm counting of like say 3, 4, 5, you're going to be massively profiting. You're going to be discarding 1 card and then be down 1 card from casting this, but then you're going to be up like 6, 8 cards, something like that, and treasures. So just keep going with your game plan, build up more and more mana to do the lightning bolt strategy, and yeah, it's nuts. We got Frantic Search, which can be absolutely abused with Storm. It is 3 mana for an instant, draw 2 cards, then discard 2 cards, untap up to 3 lands. So this does technically count towards adding to the Storm count because it essentially replaces the mana that's cost, but you want to cast this with the Storm effect of Storm, because what this essentially does is you can tap 3 lands, cast this, use the effect to untap 3 lands. Then before the next stack of the next one goes off, tap those 3 lands again, profit that mana, do the effect, untap those lands again. Before the next one goes on the stack, tap it again and profit. Just repeat that process. So you're going to be up like 16 mana, digging through a majority of your deck for the spell that you actually need, and then just continue on with your merry way, which is nuts. Love this card. Can be easily abused. Cathartic Reunion. As an additional cost to cast the spell, discard 2 cards, but draw 3. So again, with Storm, we don't have to, we can ignore that an additional cost to cast the spell because we're going to be copying it with the Storm effect. So play this card, you're down 1 card, discard 2 cards, you're down 3 cards, immediately make up for that with the draw effect, sure, but then for each instance that you stormed off with this, you're profiting 3 cards. So Storm count of 3, congratulations, you're up 9 cards. That's kind of nuts, and only 2 mana, so very achievable in early game. Throw a Possibility is a similar effect, discard a card, draw 2 cards. Not as good as Cathartic Reunion, but hey, Throw a Possibility is still a staple. Speaking of, we got Brainstorm. Draw 3 cards, then put 2 on top of your library in a random order. Again, when you do things with Storm, this is nuts. You are way up on card draw, looking through a lot of cards in your library. Gets a little annoying to resolve, but hey, you know, it's worth it. At the very bare minimum, you can use this to increase your Storm count before you cast the spell that you truly mean to cast, like a Stock Up or something. So, not bad. Preordain is a sorcery for scry 2, then draw a card for 1 blue mana. Again, card advantage with Storm. Cast this at the end of combat afterwards, and scry 2 and draw a card like 5 times. It's fantastic. Unstable Experiment. This is an interesting one. She is a hero, but this is more of a villain card because target player draws a card, then up to 1 target creature you control connives. If you're not familiar with conniving, is that you draw a card, then discard a card. If you discard a non-land card, you put a 1/1 counter on that creature. So this is interesting because you can increase Storm's size, and commander damage might eventually become important. But essentially what this does is let you draw 2 per instance for only 2 blue mana, which is a pretty good rate. Pretty solid rate. And because of that, it was easily included. This doesn't count as an instant or sorcery, but it is a fantastic card draw of Mystic Remora for 1 blue. You do have to pay 1 in order to keep this on your upkeep, but an additional 1 per upkeep. But whenever an opponent casts a non-creature spell, you may draw a card unless they pay 4. So again, solid card draw. Even if it isn't an instant or sorcery, having that recurring card draw is amazing. Now, for the best 2 cards probably in the library, you guessed it, Jessica's Will. If you control your commander, you get to add red mana for the amount of cards in target opponent's hand, and you get to exile the top 3 cards of your library, and you can play them this turn. If you storm this off with Storm, you're going to go absolutely nuts, because most opponents will have, 5 or 6 cards in their hand by the time you cast this. Well, with Storm, you storm that off, and you're going to be adding like 20 red mana. You're going to be adding at least 9 more cards to look at. You're likely going to be getting to something in the lightning bolt pile of cards that you want to be casting for a lot of mana. So that helps with that. Needless to say, fantastic card, worth the price point. And then we have Archmage Emeritus from the original Strixhaven set. 4 mana for a 2/2 human wizard. Whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, you draw a card. That includes the storm count cards. So this is a very fragile card because it is a creature, and creatures die to removal all the time in Magic. But if you can get this thing to stick and your opponents can't remove it, holy crap, this thing draws so many cards, because not only is it going to be drawing you cards off of the spells you're going to be casting as is, then you're going to be drawing cards off of the storm count of storms. So that's just absolute absurdity. Love that card in this deck. Next, how are we going to be casting all these spells? Well, we will need some ramp, and this is the cool part about this deck, is because you can cast any type of these cards at any point, and it will just be beneficial, because you could cast the ramp spells and then the card advantage to fill up your hand again, which is usually the good plan. But then you could do the opposite. Say you need a bunch of mana because you already have the Lightning Bolt and the Storm King's Thunder in your hand. Well, now you need ramp to get to that for next turn. You have spells like Kodama's Reach, Cultivate, the classics. It's just great. Explore is another great version of this. Adds that card advantage of drawing a card, but you can play an additional land this turn, and needless to say, that's awesome. Rampant Growth is finding a basic and putting it onto the battlefield tapped. Great. Nature's Lore is specifically finding a forest, but it doesn't enter tapped, which is great. We have Farseek, which is anything that isn't a forest. I got to emphasize this because I didn't think of this until much later in my Magic career, but it can be a forest, but it can't be specifically just a forest. So keep that in mind for newer players. We're not familiar with Farseek. It has to be plains, island, swamp, or mountain. And then we have more permanent ramp with Soul Ring and Arcane Signet. Arcane Signet's not bad at adding the color aspect, but also these are both very cheap mana rocks, so they can add to the storm count as well. Because it's not just instants and sorceries, it's all spells that you've cast this turn. So having lots of cantrippy style spells is great in Storm. And speaking of, we have a Storm Killing Artist, very on theme, but it gets +1/+0 for each artifact you control whenever you cast an instant or copy an instant or sorcery spell. Create a treasure. So again, similar to how the Archmage of Emeritus worked, because these are both from the Strixhaven sets, they have the Magecraft ability. So casting or copying, like with Storm, provides you that advantage. In this case, it's treasure tokens, which are great. They're just mana on layaway. I love that. So, and you need that mana to cast those big flashy spells, or get out more ramp, more card draw, storm off a bunch in a turn. That helps enable doing that. So ramp is very important. These next two are kind of ramp, but they're kind of not. We have Electro, who is a 2/3 flyer from Spider-Man, 3 mana. You don't lose unspent red mana as steps and phases end. So any red mana that you have, basically you don't lose ever, and as long as he's on the field. And then whenever you cast an instant or sorcery, you can add a red, which is great. So he acts as a battery. He stores that red mana for you. And just as a worst case scenario, if he leaves the battlefield for any reason, you can pay X, where when you do, he deals X damage to target player. So he can kind of just zap somebody if he goes away for some reason. So if you're going to lose that red mana anyway, you might as well use it, right? And then, of course, we have the solid card of Vivi Ornithir. Basically, anytime that you cast a non-creature spell, it gets bigger and deals 1 damage to each opponent. And then for 0, once per turn, only on your turn, you can add blue or red equal to his power to use that for more spell slinging nonsense. So great with the cantrippy stuff, and then provides mana over time. And that's pretty much it. I don't usually go over the mana base in these types of decks because you can do whatever you'd like. You could build it budget, you could build it as crazy as you want with shocks and fetches, or even original dual lands. But to put it simply, I like to also put a lot of like full art lands in my deck. So for this one, I chose the Zendikar lands, the full arts of those, just because I feel like those embody the nature's fury aspect of storm. You know, you have lots of lightning bolts, you have, you know, typhoons and you know, all that stuff. So I think that really exemplifies her in terms of those cool lands. And then I also have 3 lands that I do think that are worth mentioning, that I included. Reliquary Tower, just because you're going to be drawing a ton of cards. It would suck to have to lose some of them, so having no max hand size is great. We got Mistrise Village, which enters tapped unless you control a mountain or forest, which is totally reasonable. You can tap for just a blue, but you can also pay a blue and tap this. The next spell you cast this turn can't be countered. Having that ability to cast the lightning bolt without fear is a great feeling, so actually having this card in the deck is pretty nice for that. And then we have the Daily Bugle Building, another Spider-Man card, yes, I know, but taps for colorless or filters for a mana of any color. But then you can also pay 1 to tap so that target legendary creature gains a menace until end of turn. This is nice just because Storm does have flying, so it's a nice form of evasion. But there is the occasional instance where somebody gets a flyer as a blocker just incidentally, and then you're like, alright, well now I have no good attack, and Storm needs to deal combat damage specifically to get through. Well, that way you can give her menace, so at the very least she can get through to that one player that needs to get hit for the effect. So that is my Storm deck. I apologize, I'm losing my voice. That was a lot of talking. Anyway, to put it simply, this to me is one of my strongest decks. I could be wrong. I have other decks to show off in the future, but in my opinion, because of the nature of this deck and how I've been able to kind of just win out of nowhere before, with, you know, in a turn getting a ton of mana, getting a ton of card draw, and then me not even realizing, oh, I can win this turn, and then doing the Storm King's Thunder, Mana Geyser, Lightning Bolt combo of just pew, 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 pew.
Lightning bolt.
Lightning Bolt everybody. So I think it's one of my stronger decks. I could be wrong. Let me know in the comments in the future when I do some of my other decks that are on that stronger side if you disagree. Maybe you think my Storm deck is actually more of just a meme deck. It doesn't actually have that much power. So let me know. But considering this is only my second deck on this channel, we'll see. Plenty more to go. I will be putting probably another poll after this video goes out to see what you guys think of the next deck. And yeah, thank you very much for watching, sticking through it to the end. Appreciate it. And I will see you guys in the next video.